Welcome boys and girls from YouTube, my name is Sloth, this is the SlothForge, and thanks for stopping by on today's Hero Spotlight or Hero Guide. And you probably already guessed it thanks to the thumbnail. Today we are going to have an in-depth look at Premtsa. And the reason why I decided to do this video guide today about Premtsa, there are actually two reasons. Now the first reason, real quick, I think she has such a great character model. So just in general, I really like those necrotic heroes, those summoning heroes. I think I really enjoy those dark fantasy style. And not only for Premtsa, but in general for many of those necrotic heroes. Also, Ursilla's is a very, very nice character design in my opinion. And just in general, I really enjoy the graphics of this game. Not only because I think it is so colorful and there is so much different elements in this game. Like, on the other hand, we have many rats and just those poisonish characters in the poison faction, or those bright and well-armored heroes from the rally faction, and so on. And just some very, very unique character designs. And I mean, this is super unique, isn't it? And I'm here for it, because I don't like those generic and kind of boring character models. And when it comes to Dragonheir, there is not much of generic character models. Of course, there are some heroes that are a bit more generic, a bit more straightforward designed, but in general, there are so many different heroes, so many elements in this game, which I really, really enjoy. And in particular, I think that her design is very, very well. It's very good design and very unique. So this is one of the reasons why I decided to do today's guide on Premtsa, and because she is just very, very strong. And the other reason is actually that I decided that the upcoming video guides will be about those 6 heroes. The 6 heroes in the legendary Hero Prime chest. Because many people asked this question on many different platforms, on the subreddit, but also on Discord and in different comment sections as well. Because they cannot decide which hero they should choose. And I absolutely understand if you have struggled to decide which hero to choose, because all of those 6 heroes are very strong. And they are very, very strong. They can help you to deal so much more damage. And they are just key pieces in so many teams. So all of those 6 heroes are very strong. This is why I will cover up those heroes in the next couple of days in video guides. And today the topic will be Premtsa. So let's talk about Premtsa a little bit. First things first, when it comes to Premtsa, it is not so easy to build her, or it is easy to build her, but there are some different ways to build Premtsa actually. And I saw many people building Premtsa not perfectly. So let's talk about her skills first, and then we talk about the recommended stats and her equipment. So first, her aura, once again, very, very strong aura. 30% attack, but only in dungeon battles. But dungeons are a very big part of the game, so this is a very useful aura that you will probably use in many, many, many runs. Because whenever you are using her in a dungeon, you will probably use her aura. So first, her aura, very useful, very good. Now, let's talk about her passive skill, because this is actually one of the most important skills when it comes to Premtsa. Whenever an ally, undead, summoned unit, so she is used in a summon team, best case, but she can also deal very good amount of damage on her own. She does not need any other summon heroes in her team to deal good amounts of damage. But the more summon heroes there are in your team, the more heroes that summon units are in your team, the more damage your Premtsa is going to deal. Because, as you can see, whenever a summoned unit appears, the summoned unit deals 60% of attack as derivative damage not around Premtsa, but around the summoned unit. So this means the more summoned units there are on the board, on the field, the more of those passive procs you will get. And those passive procs will deal very good amounts of damage. Now, the next part, her battle skill. Now, this is actually also a very strong skill. She launches 2 of those soul attacks and then creates 2 of those specters that deal good amounts of damage on their own, but the bigger part of her specters actually comes from her passive. because when she launches those, or when she spawns those spectres, she also activates her passive around those spectres. But it is a bit problematic sometimes that she launches those attacks at random enemies. So if you only have one enemy, this is absolutely no problem. But when it comes to Arena, for example, where Premtsa is also very strong, this can sometimes be a little bit annoying if she always launches her souls on the tank. But on the other hand, if you are lucky, if you launch your 2 souls or you create your 2 spectres in the back row at the opponent's healer or damage dealer, then you can just watch him die within seconds. So yeah, the random aspect is a little bit annoying sometimes, but it is what it is, and it is still very strong. But as I said, the biggest part here as well comes from her passive, and now her ultimate. Her ultimate is also very, very strong and has 2 parts. Now the first part, here she just releases this soul torrent and deals a good amount of necrotic damage. It is not so much damage, it's only 520% attack, so there are definitely other ultimates that scale way better, but the second part, it is all about the second part of this ultimate, because now she additionally triggers her passive. Tireless Devotion is her passive skill, and now she triggers this passive once again on every ally undead summoned unit. So this is what makes this character so strong and what makes her deal so much damage if used correctly. Because, yeah, you just can use this passive over and over again, and you can deal either very good amounts of AoE damage, but also very good amounts of single target damage. She is also very strong when it comes to bosses in general. And yeah, this is her. So now let's talk about the recommended stats. And yeah, I would highly recommend to build her with attack and enlightenment, because in theory you could also build her with high crit rate and crit damage, because her ultimate, as you saw, deals good amount of damage as well. Not the best damage dealing ultimate out there, but it is decent, and it is also full AoE, and those full AoE skills are always very nice. But her passive is just a little bit better, it scales a bit better, and even if you use her on her own, without any other summon heroes, it still scales better if you go with attack and enlightenment. So I would highly recommend to focus on enlightenment and attack. Now let's talk about her gear. And as in most cases, it is recommended to go with 4 different one-piece sets. And the strongest, or probably strongest set for Premtsa is the Death Record set, just because it helps her once again to deal way more derivative damage. Apart from that, just to strike the Unprepared set, the Fearless Challenge set above, very strong as well. And of course the Chaos Symbiosis, if you've played or using her with other summon or necrotic heroes. But it is not that much needed if you have a very strong item. So for example, I have very strong helmet somewhere. But yeah, this very strong helmet. This is probably a little bit better, or would be a bit better, but she does not need crit rate and crit damage. So yeah, this is not mandatory, the Chaos Symbiosis set. You can use whatever you have here, especially if you pair her with non-summon heroes. Because as I said, you can absolutely build her with, or team her with many other ice heroes just to support her, to keep her alive, and to tank from the front line, and you will still deal very good amounts of damage with your Premtsa. And you can, in theory, for example, look at this positive rune. This positive rune is using a little bit of crit rate because it is actually my strongest enlightenment rune. And yeah, crit rate still is better than just some flat defense stats, for example, if you want to deal good amounts of damage. But as I said, it is absolutely not recommended. You should just focus on attack and enlightenment. So now let's talk about, oh no, first, if you don't have access to 4 very strong one-piece sets, then I would recommend to go with the Platinum Knight quality set. Because first, it provides a little bit additional enlightenment, and also, every time she's unleashing, or she unleashes her ultimate, it deals, just her overall dealt damage increases by 30%. So all of those passive triggers deal more damage. So the Platinum Knight quality set is actually a very strong set for Premtsa as well. And yeah, for chest, by the way, enlightenment, for the gloves, attack percentage. And now let's talk about her artifacts. Here, I'm quite sure that the Queen's Fan is by far the best in-slot artifact when it comes to Premtsa. It is, in my personal opinion, better than, or it is quite surely better than the Great Demon Skull. There are arguments to use the Lantern of the Dead, but I'm quite sure that the Queen's Fan is stronger. Now, I've tested this a couple of times, just for a short period of times on the test servers, and I'm very confident that the Queen's Fan is stronger. Now, what I like very much about the Lantern of the Dead is that it provides additional enlightenment, and it provides a lot of enlightenment, up to 120, which is a very good amount. But still, your units die, yes, but the biggest part of your damage comes while your units are alive, and you just want to maximize your passive damage, so I would highly recommend to go with the Queen's Fan. But if you don't have the Queen's Fan, but the Lantern of the Dead, it is absolutely fine to go with the Lantern for now. But later on, sooner or later, you want to go for the Queen's Fan, because there are many other heroes on your account that will benefit from the Queen's Fan as well. So sooner or later, you should go for the Queen's Fan, not only for Premtsa, but for your other derivative damage dealers as well. So, and that's it when it comes. No, actually, now what is if you don't have the Lantern and the Queen's Fan? There is also some very strong legendary artifacts. Now, in theory, you could use the Eyeball of the Giant, but actually, the strongest legendary artifact is, without a doubt, the Y-Link. Once again, now you don't deal any critical hits, you cannot trigger any critical hits, which is fine, because, as I said, her biggest part, and I think 90% of her damage, comes from her passive, comes from the derivative damage that she is dealing with her passive. And just increasing this by a whopping 35% is very strong. So, absolutely, it is nearly as strong, actually, than the Queen's Fan. The main difference is that the Queen's Fan just provides way better stats than the Y-Link does. But it is a very good alternative for your Queen's Fan. So the Y-Link, very strong as well. Now that's it when it comes to the artifacts. Now let's talk about the talents, because there are some different options as well. And I prefer the top row, the top path of the talent, just for this talent, because it just helps her to increase her attack by another 30%. And 30% is a lot. And all those derivative damage dealers, they don't only scale with enlightenment, but also with attack. So this refine talent is very, very strong. Also, of course, the stress response is not that useful once again, but crit rate is not a lost stat. It is not a wasted stat. It helps her to deal a little bit more damage, so it is not entirely wasted, but it is not that useful. So if you only can manage to reach stage 4 of your talents yet, then you should probably or could probably go with the middle row for soul supply, or with the bottom row for mana feeding. But on the other hand, no, as I see this, mana feeding is not that useful as well, because actually your units, we can see this here, they don't have any attack or defense or HP stats, so increasing this by 10% does not help anything. So if you only can manage to reach level 4 of your talents yet, then I would go with a soul supply. But if you go for level 5 or 6, especially for level 6, I would highly recommend to go with the refine talent, because it is a very strong talent. But I think that in theory, this soul ritual is also useful. But I've tested this a little bit, and I think I'm very sure actually that the refine element is the strongest. But if you have other experience, if you have made other experience with your Premtsa when it comes to talents, let me know in the comments below. As always, I'm very, very interested in your opinions and your testings. But, well, that's it when it comes to her talents. Now let's talk about the last part real quick. How do we build Premtsa ideally? Or not how do we build her, but how do we build a team for Premtsa? What are some very strong heroes to pair your Premtsa with? One extremely strong hero is Ursula's, because First, Ursula's is very good at spawning many of those skeletons. And again, the more heroes there are on the board, the more summoned units there are on the board, sorry, the more damage your Premtsa is going to deal. So, just in general, Ursula's a very strong member or partner in your Premtsa team. Apart from that, there are many very strong units actually. Now, for example, Joyce is not that good. He's not recommended. He is strong, sure, but he is not recommended to use with Premtsa because the units that he is summoning stay always next to Joyce. So they stay in your backline, and then you cannot deal any damage with her passive. So you always want heroes, always want Premtsa to pair her with heroes that summon melee units, not ranged units. And the units that Joyce is spawning are ranged. So this is why he is not recommended actually. Apart from that, I would always place in your Necrosis or your Permafrost team, I would always use Tauren because you need a healer and he is just so good when it comes to healing. So he is a very, very strong partner or healer in your Premtsa team. Also an interesting hero actually is Ladelia because she is spawning a unit, but she's only spawning one unit. So your Ursulas will have a better impact on your DPS, on your Premtsa's DPS than Ladelia will have. And another very strong hero actually is Vaska, because Vaska as well is spawning some of those, not only some, but many of those spirits. Especially if Vaska is dealing, is killing, especially if Vaska is killing enemies, yes, exactly, then she is summoning many of those spirits. So, especially for areas where you have a little bit of wave content, maybe even for PvP, but I think there are better, stronger options for PvP, but especially when it comes to goblins, for example. Then Vaska pairs so well with Premtsa. Apart from that, I think the probably strongest partner for your Premtsa is Ursula's, just because he spawns so many units. And apart from that, I would always pair Premtsa with another hero that is good at applying defense down. So for example, Sloth is perfect for this because he has this multi-hitting ultimate, so he is just a very good user of the Witch Remains. But you could, in theory, of course, also go with some ice or frost heroes. So for example, Borish is also perfectly. He's actually even better for this job than Sloth because he has a full ultimate AoE, multi-hitting AoE, so he is even better at applying those defense penalty debuffs. But when it comes to boss killing, for dungeons in particular, I would recommend to go with Sloth because he has a little bit more healing, he has this recharge speed penalty, and he hits 5 times on his ultimate. So for single target applying defense penalty, he is a little bit more reliable than Borish is. And apart from that, now in this team, you could either go with a second DPS unit, so for example, Lelvanis obviously would fit perfectly in this team, or maybe another support, for example, Gulende if you have him, for example, or for instance, or of course just, yeah, you can use Vorish. He also fits perfectly in combination with Sloth. So those are just some ideas to give you how to build a team around Premtsa. Actually, it is not that hard, it is not that complicated to build a team around Premtsa, just because she is so strong on her own. And as I said, she's very good at dealing AoE damage. So for example, in Arena, she is very strong. And especially because she starts to deal good amounts of damage very soon into the game. So after she's starting to launch her passive, her battle skill, she starts to deal very good amounts of damage. So this is why Premtsa is very strong on her own for AoE, but also she is very strong for single target as well. Because if there is only one target, she will always launch her basic attacks, her 2 soul attacks on the same target, and so she can maximize the damage output from her passive. So this is why she is very strong for both single target DPS and AoE DPS. So if you have her, you have probably already a very strong team for so many different areas in the game, just with Premtsa. You don't even need a second DPS, and you can clear many different areas in the game, probably up to stage 20 when it comes to the dungeons, only with Premtsa if she is built correctly, and of course if you have good gear. And well, I think that's it for today's video actually. Now, if I forgot something, if you have something to add, or if you disagree with something, please let me know as always in the comments below. I'm very interested in your opinions. And if you did not use Premtsa yet, then I would highly recommend to use her because she is so strong. But well, that's it for today's video. Thanks for stopping by, guys, and see you in the next one.